to another episode of the Agronomy Answers Podcast. On today's show, we have a new guest, Heidi from our seed lab. She is a registered seed technologist, which takes a long time to get, and it's going to be an awesome story. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun. We got another new guest on the show, and let's start back from the beginning because right now you're working here in the seed lab.
Yep.
But what about back in the day, back when you first wanted to get involved in agriculture? Was there some moment or some story that you wanted to get into it?
I grew up in agriculture my whole life. I grew up in northeastern Wyoming, and we raise beef cattle. And so, I've done 4-H FFA. My brother is 8 years older than me, so he started 4-H the year I was born. So, my whole life I've been involved in agriculture. Not necessarily agronomy, though. That was a new thing for me. When I graduated high school, I kind of just needed a change. So I came back. Both of my parents are originally from up by Watertown, so I went to Lake area. And started taking some agronomy classes there and stuff like that, and then kind of fell into seed testing accidentally.
Yeah, because seed testing is a lot different than like animal science and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So why did you not want to go into animal science?
I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I did ag business was my major, but we kind of have some, just being more the hands-on technical college, there's a lot more like the hands-on agronomy, chemicals classes, things like that go along with it. It's not just, the business side isn't just math or, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I took a lot of agronomy classes, and then I was going to go on to SDSU and get my bachelor's. And while I moved to Brookings kind of in between semesters and was kind of deciding what I wanted to do, I was working outside of agriculture, and I just hated it every single day. I went to work and hated it because I want to do something in ag, something with my hands, something like that. And my now husband actually had said, hey, we did some work. His dad has a concrete business, and we did some work on this lab, and I don't know what they do, but they do something with seed. You should see if they have a job. And so I looked, and I applied for something else in the office, actually, and when they called me back after the interview and said, hey, we think you'd be really good in the lab, and I just have been in there ever since.
So once you got into the seed lab, did you start probably from square one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Working up through the seed lab. So
Yep.
What caught your attention right when you started working?
I guess it's really interesting to me watching. The whole process of germination is I think it's really cool. Maybe that's a specific nerd thing, but I think it's really cool. And so I started on the planting line and just planting trays of seed for the different tests and things like that. And then as I learned more and things like that, I started evaluation and purity, and then went on to work towards my CVT, which is Certified Viability Technologist. And that is more the germ side of things. And then studied for my RST, which I have now, which is Registered Seed Technologist. And that's just kind of the other half of it with the purity testing.
So how long's that process to get those certifications? Because you still get to work in the seed lab before you get them.
Yep.
But then how long's that process take to get them, or what do you have to do differently?
So you're actually required to be in a seed lab working actively for 2 years before you can even apply to take a test. And so then it's a lot of studying. We have a set of rules that we follow that is kind of how we are required to do the tests and things like that, especially the certified tests for labeling. And so we basically have to memorize that rule book and there's a written test and a practical test that we have to take on each side, both the germy and the purity. And it's a lot. So it's 2 years before you can apply for any test. You can do them both at the same time, or kind of the norm is to do the germ test first, just because the purity is so much more involved and memorizing seed ID and things like that. So that one, people take a little bit more time. I think I was in seed testing for 4 years when I first took the CVT and passed that. And then it was another 3 or 4 years before I even attempted the purity. I had needed to work in purity a little bit longer first.
So we've talked about being inside the seed lab, getting getting the certification and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what actually happens in a seed lab? You talked about filling trays with seeds, seeing them germ, but is that all that happens there?
So we start with purity on everything that we do. And so we're going to make sure that there's not, other seeds, especially weed seeds. We don't want to, sell contaminated seeds. So we're going to go through and check for weed seeds and inert matter and things like that. And then once we have pure seed pulled out, which in our rules, we have definitions of what pure seed is for each species. And so then once we have our sample of all pure seed, then we'll plant a germ test, and depending on the species, for soybeans, we'll do a germ test, a germ test, an AA test, and all of the trait purities. So we'll do that. That's kind of a verification for the trait bioassays. And so we just plant them on a tray, 400 seeds on a moistened towel. It's VersaPack is what it's called. It's a specialized germ towel just that holds the moisture in on the seeds. And then soybeans we cover with sand, so it's more field conditions. But at the same time, we are very much testing in optimal conditions. And that's one thing to remember, too, that especially for the germ score, it's the best conditions, the optimal conditions.
Yeah, because what temperature are a lot of these tests run at?
So the germs are at 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 77 Fahrenheit. And it's full light also. So we don't have that night-day fluctuation. And so, you saw our seeds get really elongated and things like that they look a little weird, but that we're just making sure that they germ and that they produce a good shoot and root, good hypocotyl on the soybeans, and everything is good, strong, has all of the necessary parts of the seedling to be a strong, viable seedling.
And just having the all day light and they just grow quick too.
Yes,
so then the testing can go a little bit faster as well.
Yeah, so all of our germ tests are 7 days. So we plant them on a Monday and evaluate them the following Monday. And so, we can test pretty quick, which is awesome.
So my favorite part about getting new guests in on the show is hearing about your story coming into Hefty Seed Company, or how you made it here. And because we used to have a smaller seed lab, and now it's a lot better, and it's a lot more samples that are going through it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Which you can talk about that too. But how did you make it to Hefty Seed?
So when my boyfriend at the time had said, "Hey, I know this place," and I worked there for just about 10 years, and just kind of hit that point where I needed something different, and it just kind of through the channels of seed testing that Hefty was building a lab, and I thought it would be really cool to work more like with a seed company, because I feel like a lot of times in that third-party lab is nice because you're more removed from it and you don't have any, I don't want to say bias because I don't, but just it's kind of a removed and, third party. So, we're testing a lot of seed for a lot of different companies and things like that. But I really liked the idea of working more with kind of the finding the root cause, because a lot of that was just count the seeds and give the data, and where here I get to kind of find out why the issues are happening or why we have abnormals on this tray or, this lot or whatever. And so that I kind of wanted to do more of the in-depth, not necessarily research, but kind of problem solving thing. That's kind of how my brain works. And so, just a smaller lab was enticing. And so, it was really exciting too to start the lab kind of from the ground up. I've been here, pretty much since the lab started. And so that's been really cool too, to kind of build up the lab. So once I just heard that, this was opening and they were looking for an RST, which I didn't have mine yet. And so I actually had applied or inquired, I guess, about the job a while before. And then as I was working more towards my RST, kind of ended up here.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of upgrades in the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy to, build the lab, and that's been really fun, too. It's been really cool to see kind of how we started with 5 germinators and planting everything rolled towel, and, we've doubled the tests pretty much every year for the 4 years that I've been here. And last year we tested, I think, just over 10,000 tests. And we're almost to that now already, and we'll count them through June. So
Yeah, there's a lot of tests going through there.
Yeah,
And now
absolutely.
it's even a lot more because there's bigger rooms now,
Yep.
which is that kind of a more standard ice test. So before we did rolled towels with the
Right.
seeds in there, and now it's the trays like you had mentioned.
right.
What's like in the rest of the seed testing industry? Is that more
Um,
standard now, or was it rolled towels? Is that like the standard?
I think it's kind of about 50-50. In our rule book, we have approved methods that we can test. And so both rolled towel and on trays are approved methods. And it's kind of 50-50. It just depends on kind of the size of the seed lab. A lot of the smaller ones where it's, 1 or 2 people work in there and they do 4,000 or 5,000 tests a year, then they're kind of smaller, and most of them still do rolled towel just because it's not cost effective to build these big rooms. But I prefer it on trays. I think it's just a better, in my opinion, example of like what field conditions will do if you have the seeds standing up and you can just see kind of those abnormals a little differently and see the emergence more. And so it's, industry wide, it's kind of 50-50, and both are approved methods, but I am definitely glad that we moved to trays.
It looks cooler. Well, you can just it's more visual, I guess,
Right,
if you go
exactly.
into the lab.
Yeah,
It's more visual.
right.
So when you're doing this different seed testing and you're finding abnormals, or you're finding different things that are happening to the seed, are there improvements that we've made at Hefty Seed Company that have changed the amount of germination, or like helping germination scores get better? Is there different things that have helped that you're like, oh, we should change this, and it helps the germ later on and stuff like that?
I think probably the coolest thing is that I've seen with the soybeans. So we do a harvest sample. So straight out of the combine, we bring a sample in and we'll do a purity and a germ on it. And that one we're actually doing kind of a more in-depth purity of the things that are technically pure seed by the rules. We're looking at like soil stain and things like that. Those are full seeds, and so they're considered pure seed. But we want to go a step further and make sure that we're, adjusting combines to not have so much soil on them and things like that. And so there will be times where we'll get a harvest sample in and we'll test it quick, and they're, maybe moving on to another field or something like that. And so then they can come back to that field and adjust the settings on the combine, and we'll have less soil contamination on them, or like less splits, things like that, because their combine's just not beating it up so much. And so that's been really cool. And we can kind of give that direct feedback, and I think that's pretty cool. One of the cool things about, again, being in the problem solving position that we're in here, where we can give instant feedback and things like that.
Yeah, and it's not that you're the one that's selling any of these seeds or
Right,
anything like that.
exactly.
It's just you're just trying to make the sample better, and
Right.
and when you're testing it, just trying to get higher germination scores and higher
Right.
testing scores,
Right.
basically.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as what I'm doing, it's completely, I'm just going to count the seeds that are on there, but so I'm not, doing any improving of things or anything like that. I'm just giving the data, and then, the guys in the field are making the changes and things like that, but we can give that feedback and, make things higher. It's awesome.
So one of the cool things about the seed lab is we have a 40-degree room for 40
Right.
series corn.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between stuff that can germ, or like it starts in 40 degrees, then it moves over to the 77 degrees?
Mhm.
Is there a difference between like 95, 99, and like 80 germ? Like you could visually see there's a difference
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
in different corn seed.
Yeah. So the cold test, which is something that we're doing that's not really industry standard, we're testing our colds in harsher conditions. And so the point of the cold test is kind of to just stress the seed. And we want to make it as upset as possible. And we really want to simulate that planting early. And so we plant it, and we do a 40-degree test. The kind of industry standard is 50 degrees. And so we're stressing it a little bit even more. And so we'll put it in the 40-degree, and it's planted on a tray with the Kimpack to hold the moisture, and then covered in sand. And then we put it in the 40-degree chamber in all dark for 7 days and then move it into the 77 degree, the 25C, for a 4-day period. And yeah, you can, drastically see the difference in emergence and things like that on what is 40 series and what's not. And that's kind of what we're deciding with that cold test too, is whether it qualifies to be considered 40 series or not.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different things you probably learned, especially in the last 4 years here with a newer lab, but also in the whole career basically of testing seed. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned kind of in the seed industry or seed lab industry?
Everything, because I didn't grow up in agronomy or, row crop anything. But I guess kind of just knowing what causes some of the abnormals. I think that's been, my favorite thing to be learning, of seeing like the different mechanical damage and things like that, the kind of what we can control and what we can't to make the higher germs. I think that's been really cool. And like I said, especially here where kind of I'm more involved I can talk to the production guys of like, oh, well, that field got harvested a little earlier or a little later. It was dry when it came in. And so then as those, say, soybeans went through the cleaner, got beat up a little bit more, things like that. And we can kind of find the root cause of what causes those abnormals or those low scores and kind of how we can fix it.
Yeah, that's like the coolest part about agronomy,
absolutely.
Is that it's not just seed. There's some reason why it's better or worse for whatever reason that is, and then you're figuring it out because you're just getting the seeds.
Right.
You have no idea like what has happened in the field or on the way to the lab. Like it could have gotten banged around or dropped a bunch of times, and then it might change the germ score, and the rest of the samples might not be that way.
Right. So if we have one that doesn't quite meet our standards, then we'll pull a new sample just in case, because, like you said, we don't have any idea what happened on the way, especially with some of those harvest samples that, one of the farmer might take the sample and then it bangs around on the combine floor for 3 hours before they bring it in. And so then we'll pull a second sample if something weird happens.
So I have a couple last questions for you. So what part of your job do you find is like the most rewarding?
I think it's really cool to the problem solving. That's my biggest thing. I think that's the coolest thing. But it is really rewarding to be able to, see the process completely. That's my favorite part. To see, especially some of those harvest soybeans where we test it right off the combine, and then after it goes through the cleaner, and so we see, what the difference is there and how we can adjust maybe something in the cleaner or something else. Like just seeing that whole process from start to finish, and then to have some of it that's, carry over or whatever. So we test stuff at the end of the year too, and to see how it's after it's been planted or it's been, whatever, to test it again and see how it holds up and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if someone was interested in being in the seed lab or testing seed, and maybe they're studying agronomy, agribusiness, because it's not like there's a lot of people in seed labs.
Oh yeah.
Either. There's not very many of the people just like you doing what you do. What would you tell someone that might be interested in agronomy about seed testing or being in the seed lab?
I guess if you just have to find a lab close to you, and you kind of just have to do it. It is such a learn by doing type of process. And like I said, I kind of got into it accidentally, and that seems to be kind of the industry's thing of nobody really sets out to go into seed testing. There are people who have majors from history to, actual agronomy majors. And it's funny to talk to people in seed testing about how they got into it, because nobody does it on purpose. So if you're interested in it, just find a seed lab near you, and almost all of them will do like internships or things like that where you can just check it out. And our door's always open to come check out the lab and just see what we're about and what happens in there. Door's always open for sure.
And same thing with some farmers too. Do you have farmers or agronomists that come by and check out the lab?
Oh yeah. I think almost all the agronomists have been in there and just kind of come check it out, especially after we built those rooms this fall, that everybody kind of wants to see them and see how things are growing and things like that. I think it's really
Yeah.
I'm a nerd, but
It is cool. It is cool. It's cool to see all the plants kind of just growing
Yeah.
in there, and you can see them like actually. You can see if there's gonna be issues with some of them already.
Yeah.
Right away, like even
Yeah.
just a couple days after you put them in there.
Oh yeah, I mean, and just to see, the uniformity of the emergence and things like that on day 3, you can see them starting to come up, and that's a really neat thing to see too. Yeah, and I mean, back to your original question. Yeah, we've had farmers in here and all sorts of things that just anybody who wants to come and check us out. Yeah, we're in here.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great podcast. I appreciate you joining us for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for watching this episode of the Agronomy Answers Podcast. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next episode.